This hour, the Polisario Front Independence movement says it highly regrets the decision by the United States to recognize Morocco's sovereignty over the disputed territory of the Western Sahara. It was annexed by Morocco back in 1975. President Donald Trump tweeted earlier that a deal had been struck for the normalization of relations between the State of Israel and Morocco, the fourth such agreement between Israel and the Arab world in recent months. Sherwin Bryce, Pease reports.
The deal reached makes the US the only Western country to recognize Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara.
The White House proclamation says an independent Sahrawi state is not a realistic option for resolving the conflict and that genuine autonomy under Moroccan sovereignty is the only feasible solution, urging the parties to engage in discussions without delay. The UN was pressed on the Secretary General's reaction.
He remains convinced that a solution to the question of Western Sahara is possible, and that's in accordance with relevant Security Council resolutions 2440, 2548, to name two.
As part of the deal, Israel and Morocco would also restore diplomatic and other relations, immediately opening liaison offices in both capitals that would eventually lead to embassies. The United Nations Security Council established in 1991 the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, which at the time paved the way for a ceasefire between Morocco and the Polisario Front, which has for decades sought independence for the region through the Council-mandated referendum, which has never taken place.
We have always had on the table the possibility of taking up arms and using all other legitimate means to attain our rights. We have agreed to the ceasefire in exchange of a referendum. The referendum is not there, so the Sahrawis and the Polisario leadership will definitely take the appropriate decisions.
Polisario says the US brokered deal will not change an inch of the reality of the ongoing conflict and the right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. South Africa, for its part, has been a fierce critic of the lack of progress in the Security Council on this file. Sherwin Bryce, SABC News, New York.
The United States says it recognizes Moroccan sovereignty over the entire Western Sahara territory. This was after Morocco signed a deal aimed at normalizing relations with Israel. But the African Union stands opposed to Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara and continues to demand that Morocco gives the region autonomy. Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
The Kingdom of Morocco and Sahrawi Republic suffer territorial dispute. Western Sahara contests its 1975 annexation by Morocco after the withdrawal of ex-colonial power Spain. The United States, in a statement, says it reaffirms its support for what it terms as Morocco's realistic autonomy proposal for a lasting solution to the dispute over the Sahrawi Republic. But the African Union terms the occupation of Sahrawi as wrong. In its summit early this month, the AU chair, President Cyril Ramaphosa, said every effort should be made to facilitate the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. The Sahrawi Republic has called on the African Union to apply sanctions to Morocco for its occupation of Western Sahara and to stop its expansionist practices. The United Nations brokered a 1991 ceasefire pact between the two states that largely held until November this year, when fighting between the two broke out. Morocco remains opposed to a referendum for the region that offered the option of independence to Sahrawi Republic. Morocco quit the Organization of the African Unity in 1984 after the bloc admitted the Western Sahara as a separate member. The African Union allowed Morocco to rejoin in 2017. Coletta Wanjohi, SABC News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And staying with that story, the African Union on Friday said its position was unchanged on the disputed Western Sahara region after the United States recognized Morocco's sovereignty over the disputed territory. The African Union regards the Western Sahara as a non-self-governing territory. The African Union chairperson spokesperson Eba Kalondo tweeted on Friday that the position of the African Union regarding Western Sahara remains unchanged in conformity with the relevant AU and United Nations resolutions. As part of a deal to normalize relations between Israel and Morocco, President Donald Trump said Washington would recognize Morocco's claim of sovereignty over Western Sahara, as Sarah Kimani tells us.
In the Algerian desert town of Tindouf, thousands of Sahrawi refugees live in cramped shelters with the hope of one day going back home, a home which has for more than 4 decades been under occupation. Morocco has occupied its neighbor Western Sahara since 1975, when Spain, the colonial power, withdrew. Morocco moved in, claiming the territory was part of the kingdom. Its occupation was opposed by the Polisario Front, which took up arms to fight for independence. An independence referendum organized by the United Nations in 1992 aborted after Morocco disputed the voters' roll. UN mediation failed in March last year, and there has not been attempts to revive them. Trump's announcement declaring U.S. support for Morocco's control of Western Sahara will unsettle several allies, including the African Union, which has for years recognized the right of the Western Sahara to self-determination. Renewed fighting broke out in Western Sahara mid-last month between the Polisario and Moroccan troops, threatening a 21-year-old ceasefire. Sarah Kimani, SABC News.
For more on this, we are now joined by the Sahrawi ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Mohamed Baisat. Your Excellency, a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to The Full View.
Good evening, sir. I'm pleased to be with you and with your listeners.
It's an absolute pleasure having you on the show this evening, Ambassador. Now, the United States says it recognizes Moroccan sovereignty over the entire Western Sahara territory, while the African Union stands opposed to Morocco's occupation of the Western Sahara. In fact, President Trump's tweet reads in part that Morocco's serious, credible and realistic autonomy proposal is the only basis for a just and lasting solution for enduring peace and prosperity. Now, diplomatically, Ambassador, this is a big deal. So what is your reaction? What does it all mean?
Well, I don't see it a big deal. It's a president that who is in his last days in the White House. He signed what they call proclamation. The United States Constitution stipulates that the only one who can do laws is the Congress. The legislative attribution is totally in the hands of the two houses of Congress. If the president wants to do a legislation, that must be confirmed by the two houses of the Congress. So the declaration is more ceremonial and symbolic, and does not have the power of law. It's not even an executive order. It's a mere lip service to from this President Trump, who is his mandate is finishing. But in the same time, there is the obvious. Western Sahara does not belong to Mr. Trump, nor it does belong to the United States to give it to Morocco. The sole and legitimate and the only exclusively owners of Western Sahara are the people, the Sahrawi people, the people of Western Sahara. Those are the only custodians of the sovereignty over Western Sahara. Mr. Trump cannot give it. United States cannot give it. No other country can give it. And by the end, this merchandise between this tripartite agreement is totally false, illegal, shameful, and immoral.
Now, Russia has also joined in the fray, saying that the U.S. backing for Moroccan claim on Western Sahara breaches international law. How so?
Not only Russia. We've seen UK speaking, saying there is a United Nations resolution standing that everyone should abide by. There is the European Union, the African Union, ANC, even in the United States itself. Senators, the oldest serving senator, Senator Leahy, he said that is illegal and it's unacceptable. Senator Inhofe, who is a big ally of Mr. Trump, have criticized him publicly. James Baker, the third, one of the most prestigious Secretary of States, have just issued statements. Many members of Congress, academians, politicians, I think this issue is not anymore in the hands of Trump. It's in the hands of Biden, Joe Biden, who will be the next president, who is actually the president of the United States of America.
Now, this declaration, Ambassador, is in stark violation of the 1975 decision of the International Court of Justice, which rejected Spain's claim over the Western Sahara, and it also ordered that they should have its own sovereignty. So, what is it that you're going to do about this latest declaration from the United States, and are you going to take it up? And if so, would that be in recognition of the fact that the United States has got a legal standing to be making such a declaration? You mentioned earlier on that this is merely ceremonial and it's got no value at all, and it's not an executive order. So what is it that you're going to do about it? Are you by any chance going to take it up?
This statement from the outgoing President of the United States has no legal value whatsoever, has no legal implication on the situation. United Nations have assured that the Western Sahara is a decolonization issue. It's listed on the Fourth Committee of Decolonization of the United Nations. African Union have done the same. European Union has done the same. Many countries of the world has done the same. We think that this declaration is non-événement. It's null and void, and it has no implication neither on the nature of the cause of Western Sahara case, nor on the status of the territory in terms of international legality. Mr. Trump have violated not only the international resolutions and the verdicts of not only the international court, the European court and the African court, and every court in this world so far have ruled that the Western Sahara belongs to the Sahrawi. Now, Mr. Trump has finished his mandate. On the 20th of January, there will be another administration in the White House. We hope that they will come back to reason and they will come back to the very old tradition of American position, because self-determination and opposing the merchandise of peoples and territories, the first one who opposed this was the Republic of the United States.
Okay.
And the self-determination, the first one who advocated for it was Woodrow Wilson. And the United States is the custodian of the only agreement to have signed with Morocco, which is the Houston Agreements. And the United States, as a member of the Security Council and the pen holder on all the resolution on Western Sahara, has been written by American pen. So America cannot walk away from its legal, moral, and political authority as the leader of one of the leaders of the world. We are confident that a decent president and a decent administration will always be in line with international legality and with international law.
Ambassador Bassett, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
His Excellency, the Sahrawi Ambassador to South Africa, Ambassador Mohammed Bassett, joining us live via Skype there, and he's been reacting to the United States declaration that it recognizes the Morocco control over the Western Sahrawi.